Go ahead and start, Bill.
Let's get
Uh,
it on.
yeah. And welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Love Leadership Series. You can learn more about us at our homepage on Google Plus, on YouTube, where our archives are stored, and we have a Facebook page. So we are this series 2, we're in the 8th meeting of series 2, and we are focused on a book called Blackmailed. Uh-oh. Am I frozen?
No.
Oh, it looks like you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, it looked like my picture was freezing. We're focused on a book called Blackmail, which is a compilation of essays, commentaries, and poetry produced by Inner Child Press. It came out last year, and actually, our co host for this series is the publisher.
You've got mail.
So tonight, we are on one piece of poetry by a poet named Cheryl Faison, and then several other pieces that are actually the works of William S. Peters Sr., aka Just Bill. And my name is Michelle Odom. I'm located in Brooklyn, New York, and glad to see everyone tonight. And our co-host, Bill.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm Bill Peters and I'm in South Jersey.
All right. So, I guess I'll go ahead and read the summary.
Okay.
This week's reading primarily includes works of poetry, beginning with a single piece offered by Cheryl D. Faison titled Black Man's Battle, offering a voice of understanding, compassion, and encouragement. Bill Peters contributes a short story, a commentary, and 7 works of poetry in this section of the anthology. Both the short story, I Will Not Go Quietly Into the Night, and the commentary, How You Livin', he read to us during our previous meetings. The poems are Black Picnic, I Am Black, I Am Colorful, Bet on Black Baby, Liquid Black Gold, Those Savannah Days Before I Was Black, 1969, and I Am the Fruit. And I'll also go ahead and read the piece by Cheryl Faison, which is again called Black Man's Battle, and it offers a voice of understanding, compassion, and encouragement to the Black American man. That's on page 149 for those who have the book. Black Man's Battle. Freed from a safe refuge, the haven of a mother's womb, birthed in America, home of your doom, the injustice fogs like a choking smoke plume. The man's folk place, you in a mental tomb. No escape, no hope. Perhaps you will try the dope of stupidity, of criminal activity, since no one takes the time to nurture your brilliant mind. In time to find your human dignity, although it is plain to see. You are just like everybody who was born in this land, who was told, you can be all you can be. If you work hard daily, still the haters doubt constantly, blocks the way out. It is a trap, which seems there is no more escape at every visible angle they place a gate, fearfully as they anticipate that when your mind remains free, they can't incarcerate the body when you remain on your throne where your woman makes your home. A Nubian queen is she who bore you a regal family, whom you educate to emancipate, hoping they can escape the brutality of the racist mentality of those who despise your deep, dark eyes. It is your soul the enemies see, realizing your people were the first humanity giving birth to planet Earth. Since the discovery of Lucy, the African ancestors tree proves the beginning of the languages civilization speaks. Your tongue is the one the Creator made strong to be carried on. They don't want you to know. Without you, there would be no more. First, better, or even best, the black man is to the rest. A superior king living a commoner's bad dream. Their scheme is to eradicate your greatness to date, but this they will never do. You must always be you, pressing on to regain your crown and throne. You were born the child of the king. You will inherit the earth, promised to you at birth. Royal black man, the kings of every land. Don't give up. Don't give in. You won't lose the battle. In war, you always win. Um, so the question there is, what reactions do you have to this poem? You want to start on that, Bill?
Well, I'm basically, and again, forgive me because I'm very familiar with Cheryl and
Mm-hmm.
her mentality, about these particular issues that affect our community, and I see Cheryl's work as being one that reinforces or encourages, our esteem.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
You still hear it?
with me. Something started playing.
Oh, I don't hear anything now.
Anyway, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes, I don't know what that was. So wait a minute, hold on. I'm just
Okay.
shutting down that browser. You
Okay.
know, um, because I don't know where that was coming from. But at any rate, as I was saying, I'm very familiar with Cheryl's work, and I see her work as being encouraging, in the perspective as to not only who we are, but to hold our heads up, and realize that we are much more nobler than we're told, much more nobler than the, propaganda that's been fed to us. And I think for me, she sort of is encouraging and awakening to, our ancestry. In other words, that we have contributed greatly to civilization. As a matter of fact, we had civilization before there was the term civilization, you know. Um, and so I embrace her work from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That last comment about civilization reminds me. I think it was Venita, since I've been on the phone like on and off all day the last few days with her.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
think it was Benita that said something to me about Meryl Streep had said somewhere publicly that everybody is African, and I think it was Meryl Streep,
Hmm.
and there was quite a sort of negative and immediate reaction to that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But those of us who don't have a problem acknowledging it know that that's the case. I really enjoyed this poem. Um, I think it I think it strikes me as the most positive piece that I came across until your poetry started showing up immediately afterwards. So, it's kind of, I guess, maybe intentional that those poems were put together. Um, but I thought it was, I thought it was understanding, compassionate, and encouraging. Um, it also makes me think about, um, you know, I've always found it kind of interesting that I think it seems to be pretty difficult in a lot of cases for even black men and black women to understand each other. I mean, it's kind of clear why a lot of white people don't understand the black experience. But I've always had more difficulty figuring out why black men have such trouble understanding black women and why black women have such trouble understanding black men. And, and that's a part of what um, motivates me to do these reading groups
Mm-hmm.
because I do feel like, I mean, you think that this history is somehow encoded in our bones,
Mm-hmm.
and we will just come into the world automatically understanding where we have been as a
Right.
people and why we do the things we do, and have some understanding and compassion about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it missing in a lot of cases. So this was refreshing.
Yeah. And to add on to what you're saying, and I'll tell you a quick little story. But we are the product of our environment. Okay, psychologically, spiritually, and also physically. And I remember when I was a kid, I was about 11, 12 years old. My parents were building a house, and we went to live with my grandparents, and they lived in a town called Jericho or New Sharon. And New Sharon is notorious for the pig farms. Okay, when we first got there, you know, um, the smell every day, all day long was just offensive, especially when you got those hot summer days. Oh my God, it was almost unbearable. But after a few months, you become acclimated to the fact that you do not notice it.
Mhm.
Okay, and I figure that's the same mentality in reference to our environment, in reference to our quote unquote the culture, and I'm going to say the Western culture. Not that what we experience is not going on in what quote unquote third world areas, but we get so inundated with the propaganda to the point that we don't notice it or the effect that it has on us or how dumbed down we become or dulled our senses and consciousness becomes that we just accept things status quo. Like, in other words, when we talk about racism, you know, um, it's just accepted that that's the way it is. We know in our soul that's not the way it's supposed to be, but we accept with a finiteness, a finality, that that's the way it is.
Mhm.
And if you were to ask how many people, black or white, green or blue, do you ever see a change, you would get a resounding no from a large majority. Simply
Mhm.
because we've been indoctrinated, to thinking that's just the way humans are.
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so we accept it. Instead of railing against it, we accept it and walk along the road. We just walk on the other side of the street when necessary.
There is some kind of beep I'm hearing now. Is that you? Do you think?
No. Um, I get a beep periodically because my PC or my laptop's charging, but I took that out. But it's not.
No, it's a regular.
No, I'm not getting a beep now.
Okay, I don't hear it. I don't hear it now.
Okay.
Okay. Well, do you want to go ahead and point B in questions 2 and 3?
Okay. Let's see. Questions. Okay, B. This is myself, just Bill. Okay. Exquisite Black Fruit. Notice that in his pen name, Just Bill, and in the titles, that's my pen name, isn't it? And in the titles of several poems, Bill uses a lowercase I to begin nouns and pronouns. I think it is clear that Bill is making a statement with this grammatical technique, but I do not know if everyone knows what the statement might be. To Bill, what does the lowercase mean to you? Are you consciously making a statement with this style? And if so, what are you saying? 3, to the other love leaders, do you, have a reaction to Bill's comments. Okay, I'm gonna just jump into this. Being raised in a spiritual environment, aka Christian environment. My mother was a holy roller, as I say, as was my grandmother and great grandmother, as were my aunts. So I grew up with a reverence, for our Creator, God, in that when I think in terms of the I am, He's the big I am, I'm the small one. And that's my way of paying homage to that fact that I am small, in light of His bigness. Like even sometimes when I start a sentence with an I don't use the big I, because I reserve that big I for His position. In reference to that, I'm always looking up, so to speak. Kind of cheeky, but that's what it is.
So why the lowercase with the just Bill?
Just Bill, again, it's for me it's a sign of humility. Like even when I title my poems or copyright my poems, I always use lowercase letters, because I'm not much. As a matter of fact, even the story of Just Bill, how that came along, I was signing into a radio show on Blog Talk, establishing an account, and every name I could think of was already taken. So I just said, okay, Just Bill, okay, and that took, so it kind of stuck and it made sense. That I'm nothing special, I'm just Bill, there's a whole bunch of special people out there, probably more deserving, than I would ever be, and I think that, I have the opportunity to lift people up as opposed to, putting myself on the pedestal and saying, look at me,
Well, I have to, of course, beg to differ.
Okay.
You may not be special, but uh, the the writing that you produce certainly is, um, and which I see as a um, flowing directly from the Creator through you. Um, but you are the special being chosen to deliver it.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, anyway, I'm glad to hear that. Because I didn't know exactly what. In fact, I think you and I may have had that conversation before because it does sound familiar.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about bell hooks, of course, um, which is her pen name. Oh, Shareef has joined us. Good. Hi, Shareef.
Hey, how you doing? Do you hear me?
I do. Very good. You're getting pretty good at this thing.
I got nothing to do with it.
No, I can't hear you, Shareef.
Really?
I know he messing with me, man. I know that.
But we are on question 3, Shareef. And it makes me think about bell hooks, and I don't. I think I knew at some point, but have forgotten exactly what statement she is making with it. But it makes me think about the whole issue of what people see as respect and disrespect, and we kind of make a big deal in the Black community about uh, being addressed by various titles, Mr., Ms., Mrs., Doctor, Reverend Doctor, whatever. And it's always interesting to me that, some of us cling to that very tenaciously. Um, and I've noticed for a long time in the white people that I was around, I don't very often see that they have that issue. A lot of them are much more free or comfortable calling each other Bob and Bill and Sally and Sarah. And it always seemed to me it was because they knew they had respect in the world, and they were comfortable in their skin, and they sort of didn't need to be stroked every
Right.
time someone addressed them.
Yeah. If I were to address that, and I'm going to take just one segment, one small segment of society, and I'm going to talk about the writing industry. That's something I'm very familiar with because I work with a lot of writers and poets and, people and publishers as well. And I noticed that within our community, there's a proliferation of titles that precede the name, like author John Jones, poet John Jones, poetess this, and when I analyze it, that's another thing that led me to the Just Bill. I don't need anything else, because I have to kind of personally be comfortable and confident as to who I am. Where I look at others and I see that as a means of them gathering their esteem or respect. And to me, and I'm not to criticize anybody, but to me, it's also saying that you need to do a little bit more soul examination, and what have you. But that transcends not only the writing community but all communities. I had written this piece and I recited real short, a while back, because I had drawn a particular level of frustration as a result of this self-titling, and I said, you can call yourself a poet. That's all right with me. You are what you think you are. You can call yourself a mechanic, and that's all right with me. You are what you think you are. But that does not mean I'm going to give you the keys to my Mercedes. So I'm a little leery and weary of people that feel they need to be validated by letters and titles, personally,
Yeah.
And maybe,
Yeah, I am too. I'm thinking about a friend we have in our other group, Kim. Am I getting an echo? Are you hearing?
no.
Okay. Um, and she was telling us recently that her daughter goes to a predominantly white school,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the professionals there go by their first name.
Mm-hmm.
But when the daughter comes home and is around a family event, she has to do this code switching thing to be
Mm-hmm.
sure she calls aunt, 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 and uncle, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, all of that. So
Yeah,
it's
and I
it's
see that as
interesting
also
because
a means of
there are a
respect.
lot of ways that we have to switch codes.
Yeah, and I see that as a means of respect too, because if someone's my
Shareef,
aunt,
did you want to say anything on that subject?
On what subject? About people that have preface their name with titles or something, or
Yeah.
qualify their
Right, and we got into it talking about how Just Bill always uses lowercase letters, and and a lot when he titles his poems, if I is in it, he makes it a small I, and he talked about how that was his way of paying homage to the creator.
well, certainly one way to get close to the creator for people that believe in the creator, because we're living in an era, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because that's the way I feel, that atheism is on the rise in leaps and bounds, or agnostic philosophies, which is akin to that, which is the same. It's akin to that same kind of mindset. But one way to get close to the Creator is humility, certainly, uh, and we're living in an era of which is the antithesis to that. We're in an era, nothing that's nothing new because it's always been here, pride or arrogance, you know. Uh, in Arabic, it's called kibba. There's a word in the Arabic word for pride is called kibba. Kibba. It's my Arabic lesson for the night.
All right, thank you.
Kibba,
I still remember Fitra.
fitra. Fitra is what's natural, your nature. Correct.
Hmm.
Right. And kibba is pride. And you know, there's many cliches, but many cliches actually hold a lot of wisdom. And of course, the famous one about pride comes before the fall, right? Right? And pride is a trait. It's not a quality. There's, you know, people, you know, sometimes it's where the English language can be played with, and of course, poets and writers know all too well about that. Well, I'm sure Bill could concur with that. But you can really play with the English language, and I've heard some people say, well, he got bad qualities. And to me, that's an oxymoron, because quality in and of itself means something good. So how could you have bad qualities? It's either you have qualities or you have traits, which are evil. I don't say the devil has bad qualities. You know, the evil one or his army that he employs in the unseen world and the seen world. Okay, he don't have bad qualities. He has traits. This is the word that seems more appropriate to me. You know, and one of the traits of the devil and his cohorts is pride. And he always tries to sell pride to the human race, because when you get puffed up with pride and you full of yourself, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what's going on, you got a warped perception of life in general, because it's a form of intoxication, just like patriotism is the opium of the masses. And patriotism is a form of pride in and of itself, because patriotism is lauding the supremacy of a certain nation or a certain tribe or a certain people over other people. And anything that alludes to that kind of mindset, that someone got a leg up on somebody else automatically just on the strength of where they came from, or what their DNA is, or who their parents was, or where they, you know, all of that is just miserably misleading and stock full of fallacy. And anybody that buys that is going down, you know, that deep hole. They're going down that deep hole. So, you know, humility is consistent with piety. And, you know, you don't even hear the word pious, because that sounds like some kind of ancient word that came from outer space or something, you know. But piety is a beautiful thing in a human being, because it has to do with cleanliness of the heart. Cleanliness of the heart, and consciousness, and concern for yourself and human beings. You got to first love yourself before you become capable of loving others. I truly believe that. And you gotta love the one who made it possible to give you life. It's all connected. So yeah, so when people put, you know, titles, even in academia, in the field of academia, or the community of academia, the professors, the you know, college presidents, or, you know, whatever, you know, they're always pumping up all them letters after their name, the PhDs and the MBAs and the this and the that. But, you know, when they put you down 6 feet, whoever you are, all that is canceled, is null and void. It don't mean nothing. And what it does mean, what it could mean something if you used it correctly, with humility and with concern, and you shared whatever was worth sharing within the realm of those expertise that you claim you have a handle on. If you shared it with other human beings that didn't quite have that, then that might speak up for you. It might testify for you in a positive, you know.
You know what? Excuse me, Shareef. Let me interrupt you for a minute and tell you that Bill and I talked about kind of giving ourselves something of a time limit. In my other group, we try to limit ourselves to 3 or 4 to 3 or 4 minutes. I think because we have less people here, we can take a little more. But I do want us to start to become conscious of that.
Yes.
And also, he was telling me, you know, that you guys had some conversation about putting more of a problem-solving focus into our discussions. And
Right.
so I kind of tried to build a little bit of that into the agenda. So I want to make sure that we leave ourselves enough time to get to those questions. But I'm so glad that you said what you said, especially the piece about pride, because I am impressed, well, I don't know what the word is, but impressed by what looks to me like a high amount of narcissism going on in society these days. And I hadn't connected it to pride, but it makes perfect sense. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you want to finish your sentence though?
Bye.
Yeah.
No, seriously, um, when you talk about solving problems, that's even a very important component to solve many problems is to be humble and open and and listen to people. Not think that you corner the market on intelligence or your ideas are supreme or whatever the case may be. You
Hmm.
know, and very often we shoot ourselves in the foot. In the civil rights movement, you had, and any movement that we had that was supposed to be for the betterment of the people turned out to be for the self-grandizement of a few who rode that pony to personal success. Like so-called white liberals, they used the civil rights movement to ride that into the sunset to make a name for themselves.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
co-opted the movement.
Hmm.
So this is all part of these human frailties, and
Right.
the black community is guilty of the same things. It's the same because it's a human thing. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing or anything else. It's a human
Right.
thing. So when we're
Right.
speaking about solving problems, we have to think about our character. And the reason why we haven't solved problems is because our characters, individually and collectively, have been questionable to say the least.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Um, Bill, do you want to
Uh,
read questions 4 and 5?
okay, 4 and 5. Okay.
And
Want
point
me?
C.
Okay, I'll read point C and then read 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Since we previously heard the short story and commentary, let's skip those and focus on the 7 pieces of poetry included in this section. To summarize, consider Black Picnic evokes positive memories and imagery of a black family's picnic. I Am Black, I Am Colorful is in praise of the skin color black. This poem reflects on ways black is positive, strong, and proud. Bet on Black Baby honors the journey of Black Americans and encourages us to revel in the joy of survival. Liquid Black Gold praises positive aspects of belonging to the Black family and shows compassion for the jealousy and hate this invokes. It opens with this beautiful line, I am the diamond behind the face of coal. Look at me, I am life's liquid gold. Those Savannah Days,
Liquid black gold.
liquid, uh, okay, liquid black gold. I'm sorry. Those Savannah days before I was black brings us into the writer's childhood memories of a loving family and community, as well as the years when he learned the whole world is not as loving to him or his black skin. By the time he learned he was black, he had also learned to smile and knew no one could take that away from me. 1969 recalls the contradictions evident as a soldier and as a black American in 1969, as well as how little has changed in the present. There's no date on this poem. I Am the Fruit honors the sacrifices of the ancestors and recognizes a spiritual obligation to pay it forward, for in the fruit resides the seed. Did any of the themes emerge for you as you read through these poems? If so, what were they? And 5, what solutions to the challenges facing black men and all black Americans are inferred by these works of poetry?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the one of the main themes for me in all of these 7 poems is love.
Mm.
All about the love, baby.
Yeah, you got it.
I think you have a book by that title, don't you?
Yep, all about the love, baby. Yep. I do.
And
You've been watching me?
and so that came through very clearly to
Mhm.
me in all of them.
Mhm. Yeah. And
Anybody else?
I kind of think, I'm just kind of give you a little peek into my thinking, and you know what it is, but just to put it on record, um, I'm not going to say it does not matter what we've been through. Of course, it matters. Okay. And I wrote a piece not too long ago about the swinging of the pendulum. We heard that saying, "What goes around comes around." But my prayer is for humanity, more so than the sections of humanity, so that when the pendulum swings our way and we are again in power, so to speak, that we don't act as our predecessors did. That's my prayer for humanity. I try to keep a positive spin, while lending positivity to through my recollections and through my words, that yes, we are worthy, you know, but with that worthiness comes a responsibility. Once we acknowledge who we are, a responsibility to be, if you would, I don't know what the term would be, but provident and gracious, in our dealings with others. And as we've always been that way as a people. you know, any other people. I mean, if we were the Jews would be hanging the Germans right now if they could, all of them, because that's what they do. But we've never been that way. We've never went on witch hunts, for white folks. We've never done that, en masse, so we are of a different culture. We are a more humble culture, a more loving culture than most of the other cultures out there. So I mean, and that's what I wanted to bring forth through my writing, was the fact that yes, embrace who you are, love who you are, and let that love spread, and let others feel that you are bigger than the smallness they try to paint you as.
One of I'm not quite as maybe optimistic. I'm hopeful, but I'm not quite as optimistic that we still have the capacity to be the loving people that we've traditionally been. And yeah, one of the reasons that I want to do a series called Revolutionary Love Leadership um, comes through, in these particular works of poetry, the Black Picnic, um, uh, in particular, but in a couple of these pieces, you're writing about your childhood
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and and how you were loved during that period of your life, and how that love has sustained you over the years. And in my own life, I felt well loved as a child,
Mm-hmm.
and I am conscious that I have had to draw on that well over the years, because its love has been much more difficult to find, in my adult years. But I think it's critically important that, from a problem solving perspective, that we focus attention on making sure our children are feeling well loved. Um, One, because it will sustain them, and two, because I think if you don't get it at that stage of your life, it is very hard to move through the world as an adult as a loving person.
Yeah.
Shareef, did you want to comment? Are you familiar with these poem pieces of work?
No, I must confess I'm not familiar with it because you know
Okay.
my
Well,
book got
you
misplaced.
know Bill Peters is a loving guy. That you know, right?
That I know, but and may be blessed, over and over for that. And anyone that carries themselves like that, really. But unfortunately, my book, my black Bill, my black male book was misplaced when I moved out of here. When I moved, rather, and it's I've been looking for it. So bear with me. It's been crazy, and it's going to get crazier because I got to move again. So,
Well,
but
let's look at the next question, Shareef, which is what solutions to the challenges facing Black men and all Black Americans um, are inferred by the poetry, and the poetry, as I said, um, has a strong theme of love coming through. But you've already mentioned some solutions this evening, like humility, um, character issues. But say a little bit more about that, if you would.
well, connected to that, because people can say a lot of things. I mean, we're in the habit of paying lip service to many things. We're in that kind of society, is a very superficial, hollow kind of existence many times that we encounter, in the collective, and certainly individuals seem to sign on to that kind of approach to life, and they say a lot of things, and they're quick to run their mouth, but when they're put to the test, meaning in general, when I say they, humankind in general, they miserably fail that test uh, because love calls for sacrifice if it's true, if it's true, and that's where we have fell short miserably. That's a human condition, and it's getting worse, not better. Except there's always exceptions to the rule. Uh, we downtrodden people who have been beaten down by racist systems, by supremacist systems, by exploitive systems, with any kind of system that has diminished quality of life for any people, a people, whoever they may be, uh, had to, in the face of that, develop a real love for each other, number one, for self-survival, for themselves, number one, rather, then each other, for self-survival, and a true concern for one another, to pull together in face of this great test of oppression, in whatever form it came in. And people's very often fail that test because they're afraid, and they really need to be afraid of not taking on that mindset. That they should really be afraid of not having a real sense of sacrifice for your fellow man, sacrifice to attain any semblance of freedom. Freedom don't come free, it ain't cheap. And Malcolm said, Haj Malik said, the price of freedom is death. He didn't play with words. He said the price of freedom is death. Meaning that doesn't mean necessarily you're going to die because you had a quest for freedom, but it means that you're willing to, if it called for it. And that's rare to find in human beings these days. Very rare. And the black community is a shining example. Well, is an example. I'm sorry to say, of that malaise, of that collective malaise, because we have reduced many things to rhetoric, because it sound hip, sound fly. We impress each other with it. We want people to think of us as something, positive and activist. Somebody say, "Oh, you an activist? This man's an activist," So he poke his chest out. He an activist, as there many people in that realm developed into essentially poverty pimps. They used that again to co-opt whatever was thought of as the agenda to achieve something positive, to affect change for a downtrodden people, and instead enhance their self-aggrandizement. All that comes from insincerity. It comes from insincerity on the part of individuals and on the part of groups as well, which is made up of individuals. You know, we lack sincerity, and that's not just in the black community. That's in most communities, if not all communities, and it varies. And it's part of the times we live in also. It's part of the times we live in. Liars are believed. Liars are held up high. You know, con men are held up high. Righteous people are frowned upon. People that have some kind of ethics and have some kind of morals are frowned upon. And right across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And morals play a major role in the development of humankind, because the Creator set that he set that tone when he created morals. He created morals, and it's embedded, whether it's in the Christian Judaic framework, which is in the Ten Commandments, in the book of Exodus, in the Old Testament, in the Torah. It's in the Torah. It's in the Torah that was given unto Musa, may peace be upon him. And it's also claimed by the Christian groups, different parts of Christendom, whatever they may name themselves, Baptists, Protestant, whatever, Catholics. And they claim to follow the Ten Commandments. Well, the Ten Commandments is stuck full of morals and laws for the betterment of man. If he was to adhere to these things, it's only for his own good. They've thrown that in the garbage. You know, so we brought up in a lot of fallacy. The whole concept of separation of church and state means they're taking God out of government. They're taking God out of government. And there's a reason for that, because they don't believe in God. They worship the devil. Many of the people in high places in government have sold their soul to the devil. Many of the people of affluence in this world have sold their soul to acquire that kind of crazy wealth that they enjoy for a couple of minutes until death take them over. Then they're going to find out for real what that was all about.
Oh, I'm beeping you. But go ahead and finish your comment.
Well, I didn't want to monopolize the conversation, and I apologize. I didn't mean to go off.
No, it's good, and I
But the thing is that it goes down to those basics. It always goes back to principles. It always goes back to very, very simple basics that have been overlooked. And you know, there's so many things that people got to analyze and dissect to realize that they need to change their lives. They need to make a 180. They need to turn their lives around.
Mm-hmm.
In the present situation, the way many of us think and our mindsets are, we're not prepared to affect any real change. It's all been reduced to rhetoric. And the proof is in the pudding, because there has been no change. There has been nothing but rhetoric for years.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been no change. And like my man said, Bill said a minute ago, in reference to things haven't changed. They have changed in the negative, not in the positive.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't changed in the positive. Racism is very much alive in the world. It's taken on, it's a chameleon. It has the characteristics of a chameleon, where it can change shapes and colors and things like that. But it is that same old evil agenda nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it different things, and they pop game all the time. Everybody popping game. You know, they pop so much game they believe their own game. You know, they believe the game.
Yeah. So let's 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 move on a little bit. Bill, did you want to say anything to question 5? I can't hear you. Are you
Yeah,
talking?
I had muted myself because I didn't want any background noise. Um,
Good idea.
okay, but I don't know how closely linked it is, but I did come up with this thought, and I wanted to say this. When I look back, 4.5 centuries ago, one of the major things that happened um, was we were, as a people, were untethered from our roots. In other words, our culture and our history was stolen. Okay. And I think going forward, and this is one of the things discussions Shareef and I had, I told him how important it was, and you and I talked about it, how important it is to pen the consciousness that you have today, that it can be paid forward. Okay. Because that's one of the things, because as we know, we don't write the history books, but we know that the history books are filled with lies and filled with omissions of us in any contributory or positive way. So if they're not going to write the history, which we can't depend on them to do, the Macmillans and the McGraw-Hills and all that kind of stuff, and the educators, we must write our own history. We must, by any means necessary, which is why publishing, by any means necessary, record our sentiments, our thoughts, our stories, our memories, those particular things that, like in this book here, for example, my great 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 grandchildren can read what their great 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 grandfather wrote, and touch what I experienced. Same thing with Shareef, same thing with you. YouTube may not necessarily be there 100 years from now, um, but I do believe that books will. You know, um, CDs they're almost out now, but I still think that books will. So if we can't remember to say and sit our children down on our laps and tell them stories about the way things used to be, which we were fortunate to grow up in that era where I had a grandparent that sat me on his lap and told me stories about how he grew up or how they grew up and what they experienced, and that became the wealth of my life. The unfortunate thing for me is that from our personal experience, it only could go back so far. Okay, so my warning to us as a people, and any people really, but to us as a people, is that we gotta nurture the roots that we now have, because they're only about 4.5 centuries old. 4.5 centuries old. But we got to nurture these roots. Whereas we look at our counterparts, they have roots that date back, tens and hundreds of centuries, which they can reach back and grab. We don't have that luxury. But what we do have, we have to preserve and protect.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to put the timer on myself. When Shareef was talking, one of the things that I wanted to follow up with, when he first came on, he was talking about the atheism that's so prevalent today, and then in his last comment, he was talking about um, uh, how we don't have the same kind of moral values. And I just wanted to say that I think there's also, from my perspective, um, like a physical dimension going on, in that, like, I'm a very non-visual person. I mean, I know what you look like, but I don't really know what you look like. Those are not the things that strike me most. But what I notice about a lot of people is that visual images seem to be very important to how they learn and what they know. And 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 physical, or the material reality, seems to be very important, which is, again, not something that's very important to me. because I've always just felt this spiritual connection. And I don't know if it's because that's who I just actually am, or, part of the baggage of being a preacher's kid. But I have always sort of existed in this spiritual realm more than the worldly realm. But I see in a lot of people that material things, physical things, including our physical bodies, are of great importance to us. And so when you talk about, the willingness to sacrifice, that freedom requires, the potential sacrifice of your actual body, it's very difficult to get people on board with that kind of agenda, because they are very much tethered, from what I can see, to that which is tangible, that which is physical, that which is material, that which they can see, touch, and perceive with their five senses. And so without a religious or spiritual sort of philosophy or perspective to your life, I really don't know how we begin to move humanity in a different kind of direction, which is what I think needs to happen. I'm not going to say a lot about it right now, but I do have a couple of seconds left here. We're going to talk about Beyonce's new song in our other reading group next Tuesday, the song called Formation. And it's just been interesting watching the great praise. There is some criticism out there, but mostly it's been great praise for this song. And it's for me literally like watching a stampede of buffalo, headed toward the cliff. And there are a couple of voices out on the perimeter, saying, "There's a cliff, there's a cliff," but nobody can. All you can hear is the, And I don't know. I think that's where we are. So time's up. So, Bill.
I was going to say, and to chime in, not to be redundant or, fill the air with rhetoric, but we know that is one of the staple moves, of the institutionalization, the European or white institutionalization, is to minimize, marginalize anything that we do, to vilify us. I was looking at this post. I don't know if Shareef posted, someone had posted today or yesterday. They were talking about the differences between how we're labeled in the media. Like when they had the protests in Ferguson or Baltimore, we were thugs and rioting. Yet and still, when white kids do that at a football game or any other place and then have millions of dollars worth of damage, it's
boys
like
will be boys,
a little rowdy, the good old boys, and all that kind of bullshit. Excuse my language, but we know that this dual standard exists. Okay, I think in the past blacks have always tried to tiptoe in the eggshells around that, just to not feel persecuted, and even to this day, black while driving is still a thing that we have to kind of acquiesce to the authority, right or wrong, simply because we're black. So there's challenges to all of that, that I think that need to be addressed. But again, these are the problems that we face, and how do we? This goes back to the question that you and I had a discussion about. Where's the reconciliation? Where's the resolve? And I think that we have to step our game up consciously and spiritually as well, to seek out answers, if you would, or moves that circumvents us losing our power before we even recognize that we had it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did it. Shareef, did you want to say anything else before we move on to the next section?
No, go ahead. No.
Okay.
Thanks.
So this is the love note, and and it's about relating today's reading selection to the concept of love. And the questions are, was there anything in the day's reading that speaks to you or strikes you as an example of revolutionary love? And if so, what was it? And do you see a way that revolutionary love might help to resolve some of the problems identified in this week's reading? And if so, what might that look like? Well, one of the things that stood out for me was the piece where you talk about, I'm going to read it actually. It's on page 163, and it's called Those Savannah Days Before I Was Black. And the piece that stood out for me was where you talk about no one can take that away from me. No one can take the smile away from you. You know, even when they're acting downright ugly. Here's the poem. Those Savannah days before I was black. I was born and partially raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. After my birth, my mother and I went back to her home in the South, Savannah, Georgia. My father was serving his country overseas, fighting, dying in the Korean War. I don't think he knew anybody from that land. The man had sent him over to help vanquish the enemy of democracy. Back in the South, at a very early age, my mother, Grandma Weeze, and Granddaddy Frank, I suspected things were a bit different, but I was not too concerned about it because Grandma Weeze made some slammin' biscuits with homemade butter. I even helped her churn it. It was fun. Until my arms started aching or I got bored and my friends came over and wanted to play, we made slingshots and shot chinkaberries at targets and each other, but there was never any maliciousness. My Grandma Weeze, she loved me and my mom with the natural abundance of her heart. I felt so safe in those times. I did not know I was black until I came back north and began attending grade school. Let me correct that. None of us were black back then. We were Negroes and colored folks, and I was proud of it. Yes, sir, it was a good thing to have color, and a lot of it. We sang, we danced, we laughed, we played. We just enjoyed being alive. I remember the sugar sand, the biting ants, and sugar cane, and Mr. Johnny came across the street with the barrel full of stale candy and potato chips he kept just for us children. I planted a pecan tree, and it is still bearing fruit, or should I say nuts, like me, some 60-odd years later. And the palm trees dripped with moss, reminding me today of days of old and those hot days when we cared not how hot could be. I loved going into the city and walk downtown amongst the stares of the other people. I now understand it, but it took me well into my teenage years before I could decipher the meanings of those odd looks. Yeah, I was different and indifferent to the reference, for I did not know of what bias was then. I only knew wonder, and I wanted more of what this wonderful had to offer. I kept my eyes open, since sometimes I wish it was not so, for in the subsequent years there were many things I wish I could forget. I saw and still see. Savannah became my home away from home, and home was wherever my heart was, which was wherever my mother was. Funny the twists and turns that life subjects you to, isn't it? Today my mother resides in another dimension, and still yet she has my heart, as does Grandma Weeze and Granddaddy Frank and Aunt Mattie and Aunt Bessie, Aunt Julia, Nana and Gramps, and my two Aunt Bernices. There are so many more. I can, but I won't name them all, for the list is quite long, and each one I have given my heart to. For regardless of what I was or what I am, I only wanted to love and be loved and smile, of course. Life sometimes has another agenda, or at least the people in it, but I shall smile anyway, for that is my way, and shall always be, for no one can take that away from me, because I remember where I came from, and a part of my heart still resides there for eternity. These were the Savannah days before I learned I was black. By William S. Peters Sr., Just Bill.
Yes, yeah.
Um,
That
so,
was
you know,
powerful, powerful, man,
that's powerful.
powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
You need to
And
do a screenplay on that joint.
yeah.
Now, who you going to cast, man? Who you going to cast? Huh? Who you going to cast?
Well, I want to be one of those grandmas or aunties or somebody.
You know, I have one of my younger brothers. There's about maybe 15 years between us, maybe 12 years between us. I remember going back maybe about 20 years ago. Him and I were having a discussion, and we were talking about. I had brought up to him, about racism, because I came up in high school before the sit-ins. Okay, black stayed here, white stayed here, and there was a little bit of intermingling, but very, very little. The nerds intermingled, the band members intermingled, the football players intermingled, but they went through separate areas of the locker room because everything was cliquish. And I won't say there was tension, but there was no love, between, the different races, and it was, But anyway, I've been talking to my brother, and he came up in a whole different, generation than I did, and I was talking about racism, and he says, "I don't even understand what you're talking about," and he didn't, because a large majority of his friends were European persuaded, and he hadn't experienced some of the things I had seen. I remember in 1969 being in Fort Lee, Virginia, in the Army, and they still had black and white bathrooms. So
I know I was shaking my head when I read that in the other poem.
yeah. And I'm thinking about that now, because we may not have witnessed it, but they were still lynching us in the 60s.
Right. While we're going off to fight for the country.
Yeah. So it's very, very interesting, what we have experienced and seen transpire in our, 50, 60 years or so,
That's what Ali. If I remember, Muhammad Ali came back from Rome when he won the gold medal in the 1960 Olympics in the light heavyweight division, and he went home to Kentucky, Louisville being his home. Remember the Louisville lip?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Muhammad came home, and he went to eat in a restaurant, and they wouldn't serve him. So he took the medal and threw it in the river. I don't know if it was the Ohio River. What river separates Kentucky from Ohio?
I don't know. And I lived in Ohio.
Well, there's just a body of water that separates those from Louisville anyway. From Kentucky.
Right over next to Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's right. So he chucked that thing in the river. He chucked the medal, the gold medal of the Olympic gold medal that he won in Rome, in the river, because he said, and I forgot, he said some words around it too. But basically, what he was saying, that it wasn't worth a hill of beans. It wasn't worth nothing to him because of what's the reality back home when he got back home,
Right.
And that's echoed in all the black soldiers and servicemen that came home during the Jim Crow days. People that served in World War II in Korea, even in Vietnam. I remember in Baltimore, Maryland, in the 1960s. I remember I was in Baltimore in the 1960s, and they still had segregated restaurants in the city of Baltimore in the 1960s, in the mid-60s.
Wow. Well, I love this poem, Bill. This was, and I love that part about holding on to your smile, which to me does not mean, even though I tend to be like that, it does not mean walking around, like a goofball all day long. but but it does mean, trying to find your own source of positive energy. And I think, as you said earlier, you said something about that earlier tonight. Um, about, I think we were talking about how people are looking for respect outside of themselves, but it's the same kind of thing. And so from a solutions perspective, I think there's something very powerful about finding your own happiness and affirmation and respect and love internally, and you have to nurture that.
Right. And I think a large component of that contributes to self-worth, especially in this Western culture, is for us to continue educating ourselves, our children, and white folks about what we have contributed, what we have sacrificed, what we have done. Not so much just beating them in the head about slavery, but look what we did, look what we accomplished, look what we invented. You do this because we invented this. That kind of self-esteem, to know that we came, as Cheryl says, from kings and queens, that we come from a lineage of civilized people. Though Africa by and large is portrayed as a bunch of bushmen running around, bones in their nose, jumping in grass skirts and wooden huts, that's a very, very small portion of Africa. Okay. But
excuse me 1 second, Bill.
Yeah.
I just got to give you my salutations. I got to leave now.
Okay.
Oh, well, we're so glad you could join us, Shareef. We're gonna have to figure out how to get your poetry in early. Like maybe when you first come on, you should come on offering us a poem. How's that?
It's fine with me if you want to do that. It's fine.
Because I need that fruit too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bill, y'all have a blessed night. You take care.
Brother. We'll talk.
Bye.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Yeah.
So you were saying, Bill?
Yeah, so I think that's integrity important, is that we educate, because if we depend on the institution, the educational institution, to educate our children about who we are, we know we're omitted, with the exception of that we were slaves. Morsel here and there. But by and large, we have a magnanimous history that is not being told,
Right.
A history that predates slavery,
Well, it's just like the current events, the history that is being made before our very eyes is being skewed.
Oh, absolutely.
Before our very eyes.
Right, and we see it and bite into it anyway.
Yes. So it's but again, going back to the pieces of poetry that you offered, I mean, for me, another theme that shows up there is family. I love the Black Picnic, and the childhood memories that evokes, and but it's those kinds of occasions, those kinds of family reunions, those kinds of gatherings that offer, a great opportunity to pass on some of that history, because we continue to be an oral people.
Yes.
And, as much as I love to write, as much as you love to write, and though a lot of us are readers, we still predominantly are an oral people. And so those kinds of gatherings, are the perfect opportunity to pass on the kind of knowledge and history that you're talking about, if we use it that way.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, what night? What poems do you have for me tonight?
Well, in theme with, what we were talking about, tonight, I started writing this poem called Stories. So I'm going to give it to you raw, what I've gotten thus far. And it's titled Stories. There is no mystery to my story, and his story does not tell it all. And thus his story is termed history. This is not, but it is not my story. Why, in truth, it is not even their story, so it can never be our story. It is a story at best. I told some stories in my past, and I was always chastised or punished once the truth got out about my misgivings. Stories are imaginative or deliberate fabrications of the facts, or the absence thereof. Now, there's a lesson that needs to be learned by he who proffers his story as history. But truth be told, they are one and the same, for his story is the only story being told to the masses, but it is not my story. His story becomes history, and it is built upon a foundation of mistruths and omissions.
Absolutely. Well, I've got some history here for you that is not based on mistruths
Okay.
and omissions. It's called Black Picnic, and it goes like this. Barbecue ribs, corn on the cob, some collard greens, hot dogs, and hamburgers, and plenty of beer and sodas for the kids. We be having a cookout. People milling around, family members you don't quite remember, or you do, and try to avoid, evade, 'cause they made an impression on you. You wish to forget, like juicy lips and wide-ass hips, flirting with you like you were not related to their inebriated states of consciousness. I'm just confessing here how they make me feel. But for real, today I am going to have some big fun. The pool is open and the old folks choose to be coping while the young one is groping with the heat, talking shit, playing pinochle, dominoes, just trying to ease the time on by. Let's go get some crabs. A bushel or two will do. One for me and the other for the rest of you. I love me some Maryland crabs, the picking and licking. Man, you must be tripping to think I'm going to share this here jumbo lump crab meat I picked with you. Give me a beer, young gun, will ya? No, you cannot have a sip, at least not right now. Wait till your mama ain't looking. Man, the party is cooking, as is this hot-ass sun. We sweating it out, son. We be having big fun. Summertime is here, and us folks, we be ready for this black picnic. June 20th, 2012, William S. Peters Sr., Just Bill. What you got for me, Bill?
Um, I want to read this piece here called An Address to Humanity. Because, I got to go back, to whatever. And I don't know if you read it or not, but I'm going to read it. And this
that does not sound familiar to me.
Okay, and it's gonna appear in the World Healing, World Peace Anthology. And it goes like this: An address to the world, a plea for our humanity. We may disagree on many issues. We may stand on opposite sides of many of the lines drawn in the sand. Our politics may differ as well as our religious beliefs. What remains common with us all is so much bigger than the petty nuances found amongst us. The common bond is significant in that we are all human and we are all on this same global ship, whether we like it or not. For far too long, we have allowed these differences to cause an unnecessary rift betwixt us when we all ultimately have the same goal: peace, love, and happiness. There is none amongst us in our right minds that truly wish to suffer. Yet we many times are the cause of not only the suffering of our own personal selves, but that of our fellow human family members. We live in this world of turmoil that is slowly becoming more infested with bias, bigotry, greed, power-mongering, climate disruption, war, homelessness, famine, pollution, and disease, to name a few. We can, yes, can re-erect, re-event, recreate the conditions that are suitable to all the inhabitants that occupy this home planet of ours. Contrary to some beliefs and deceits fed to the people, it never was about available resources. What we lack, we have the ability to improvise and make do. Such is the spirit of mankind and womankind too. It is time for us to awaken and by any means necessary, as Malcolm said, come to the realization that selfish and self-serving interests have become outdated. Our world is at risk, for we trusted in the few to care for the many, and they have failed us tremendously. We have an individual capability to meet all the challenges before us. Collectively, we are invincible. Now is the time for all good men and women to stand erect and let their voices speak out loudly for the change we all desire in our hearts. We can no longer use the excuses of fear and our lack of ableness, for we all were endowed with a power that exceeds our finite understanding. It is time for the awakening of our divinity, that we may recognize without a shadow of a doubt who we are, what we may become, and where we are going as a race of people on the planet Earth. The choice is ours to make. Our hearts are much bigger and have a greater capacity to love and accept one another than we can even begin to fathom. Let love rule the days of our lives. Let a new day, a new reality be birthed within each of us. Let us listen again to the music and learn once again to dance together. There is a wellspring of hope within each of our souls that has never, can never be defeated. So let us open the gates, loose the change, and become what we were created to be, gloriously divine again.
Beautiful. I got one for you.
Okay.
This one is called Liquid Black Gold. And I just want to put the picture up to say it's got this picture of this beautiful black woman in this beautiful robe. And you have that picture in color, actually, don't you, Bill?
Yes, I do.
I have such an eye for finding beautiful artwork. You always have. But anyway, this one's called Liquid Black Gold. I am the diamond behind the face of coal. Look at me. I am life's liquid black gold. I am smooth. Just watch my flow. I can make the best of life wherever I go. Yes, you are troubled, but you can't hold me back. And I'm not sorry to remind you of all that you lack. Yes, I am regal, my father's sovereign heir, for I know that he loves me, so I live this life fair. My smiles are endless, my heart embraces all time. Can you hear my music? I make all souls rhyme. Be blessed, you are forgiven, for hate damages my shine. I am into the light, baby, for all of creation is mine. For I am the diamond, but you see only coal. If you knew what I knew, you'd love this liquid black gold.
Yeah.
I love it.
And here's the ironic, sarcastic aspect of that poem and our reality. Though it can never be admitted, they do love that liquid black gold. And we're emulated in so many ways, in sports, in music, in so many ways. How we dress, they're running around. They want the thicker lips. They want the bigger hind parts and
the tan skin.
Yeah, the tan skin, the dreadlocks. I mean, everything we are is emulated, by a European persuaded culture. Yet on one hand they're embracing us with love and envy, and the other hand they're kicking us in the teeth, with disdain. So sometimes it's just kind of, envy's a tough thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Envy, jealousy.
Institutionalized.
Let me ask you this. So, you write a lot of poetry, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Is poetry somehow a solution to our problems, and if so, why?
Well, let me put it this way. And I got one piece I want to read in closing, but let me put it this way. I, like you, came up in a very, very religious, environment. From a young, when I say young, from a little one, I was pegged by my family and the people that knew me that I was going to be in the pulpit. and I bought into that for a little while, until I, started asking questions that could not be answered. And in doing that, because I was teaching adult Sunday school at the age of 13, but there was questions that could not be answered, and I was frustrated. So I went off on my own journey to whatever. But one thing I found is that with authority figures, they like to say, "Do as I say and not as I do," type thing. Listen to me. Because I had these letters behind my name or ahead of my name, whatever. And I refuted that. I've always been a rebel. And I made a decision that I never want to be responsible for someone else's soul. Don't follow me. If you see something I do and you like it, fine. That's your choice. But I'm not going to say what you should be doing. I can say it all day in poetry. I can be cryptic. I can be straightforward. I can be any way I want to. But the poetry literally is my pulpit. Paper and pen is my pulpit. Some people may get it. Some people don't. And that's okay with me. Because I'm not collecting any tithes I get are coming from a place that cannot be taken away. So I'm not asking for tithes. I don't drive a brand new Cadillac because whatever, none of that kind of stuff. So my only responsibility that I feel to my congregation is to listen to what the Spirit is saying to me and pay it forward as I'm told, to be obedient. Practice my reverence. Try to maintain some semblance of humility. And work on Bill. Because Bill will be a work in progress until his death. As I think we all should be. But again, whatever.
Well, before you read your last poem, let me say, I was just saying to someone yesterday, she was asking, how is it possible that someone with my background and experience could, have had all of the trials and tribulations that nobody knows the trouble I see. So, how is it possible? So I was kind of giving her a blow-by-blow recall of all of the things that happened. And so finally she said, well, and I told her that, I kind of went from health crises to financial crises to spiritual crises. It's been a combination of all three, And she said, well, tell me now, how are you spiritually? And I said, well, it was very difficult for the people that were, who I was living with and depending on to understand why I was spending so much time on Facebook. But this is the period when I got into Facebook, and I really started out with a mission of knowing that I needed to find some spirits that I could connect to, because in my world I was feeling really surrounded by monsters, just really like I had just fallen into a pit. And I knew that if I couldn't find some people that reminded me of what human beings look like, that, I didn't know how much more I wanted to go on.
Right.
And so really the very first voice, and I was calling your name for her yesterday, the very first voice that I found was your poetry. And I just felt like, no, you have to be a human being to write this poetry. That must be him. He's alive. His heart is still alive. Somebody's at home. And so, I started making my way over to your page as often as I could. And, and over the years, there have been a handful of others. Henry Lloyd McCurtis is one. Janice Pete Graham is one. Ruby Sales is one. But it's really, I've been active on Facebook since 2010, so about 6 years now. And there probably are maybe only like 6 people that strike me that way. So in terms of a solution, since you want me to talk about solutions,
You gonna love
I'm
that
gonna,
analogy.
I'm gonna say that I definitely think that poetry is a part of the solution because it reaches us on a different level than other forms of art,
Hmm.
um, and that as I was talking earlier about the materialism and the physicality and the worldliness of our current world, um, what this capitalist society teaches us is that the only way to be happy is
Hmm.
to have stuff and a lot of it. Just keep bringing it up, bringing it up, bringing
Right.
it up, and
Right.
maybe one day you will be happy.
Right. Right.
But what I'm pointing to as a solution is a conscious process of finding ways to find joy in other aspects of life. And good poetry is joyful.
And if I may say this, that I think that poetry, art, all art really, but I wrote something the other day that art is the key that unlocks the souls of our prison, or the prison of our souls. You know, in that, I cling to poetry because that's my forte. But I think that, it has an ability to reach into an inner consciousness within us that is not guarded, to go past a gate that is not guarded by our reason. So we can read something and never realize that we're reading something, but it's, been recorded in our subconscious mind, so that, it's made its mark, you know, regardless. And then, as you know, poetry is also interpretive. It can be interpretive in that, allows other people to see the message behind the message, you know, um, or get messages that I've written poetry and people got messages out of it that I didn't even know was in there.
Wow.
And relate it back to me. I says, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." And I wrote the piece. So, the funny thing is that lends itself back to where it's coming from. And it's coming from a place that is of a higher understanding than my own. As smart as I may be, I realize that I don't know everything, but I know somebody that does. Okay, so if I can be obedient and channel through what the spirits are speaking through me, that is my job. You know, um, and my life has been enriched because of it as well. And the people I met, such as yourself, and so many, many other people, that I've had the opportunity to embrace in this environment. Fortunately yourself and a couple other people I had the opportunity to meet in person, but it has enriched my life so much more, and I would like to think that it enriched the lives of others just through the obedience of sharing what the Spirit puts upon me. So I think poetry does have a very, very valid, place, in, the evolution of our society, the evolution of mankind, you know.
Well, take us on out with your last piece.
Okay, this is a piece that I wrote back in 2009, 2010, I think. Um, and it's actually on my CD. And this was a time where I felt that, sort of like How You Live and the piece How You Live is paying homage to the ancestors and what they have paid forward, in order to provide us this opportunity where we can get on places like this, speak out, because, you go back 100 years, we weren't able to do this. Even if the technology was available, we weren't able to do this. We weren't able to even whistle, or walk down the street, certain streets, But anyway, this is titled I Am the Fruit, and this is a realization of the fact that we are the fruit of our preceding generations, our ancestors. I am the fruit. I am the fruit of the spirit of my ancestors from the seed they planted in the gardens of their dreams, their hopes, as they suffered and toiled, sweated and bled, and cried to nourish their prayers for the day, their tomorrows, and our here and nows. My soul has yearned to taste this fruit, this offering for which so many sacrificed and died in the hot, balmy days of the fields, in the cold, dark nights of someone else's wilderness. We made it through, with the hungry babies crying, with no time for sighing, and our unwilling complying, for the Lord, He was trying, testing our mettle, testing our character, of our visions and of our pains. And I am the spirit of my ancestors, and that spirit is sweet. For I was planted and nurtured in the spirit of forgiveness. I am the spirit of love. May I honor this spirit with my character, my works, and my dreams. For my children's tomorrows with love. For in the fruit resides the seed, and I am the fruit.
I know, I love that one. I love that one. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Miss Michelle. Good night, Venita.
Good night, Venita, and we will see everyone next week reading our story together.
There we go. Okay, great job.